want to welcome all of you to our Perhaps How Do I Get There session tonight on EMS. My name is Emily Johnson. I'll be your host for this evening. I'm part of the marketing communications team at Rural Health Professions Action Plan. Our team at RPEP can be found across the province working with rural communities and focused on attraction and retention of healthcare providers. If you're joining us today, it's likely because you or someone you know, whether that be your child or students that you work with, are interested in a career in emergency medical services. You probably have questions about what it's like being a paramedic, what the post-secondary pathway into this career looks like, and what it's like to work in a rural setting. I'm very honored to introduce you to our wonderful speakers who are here to answer those questions for you tonight. Dallas Pearson is a supervisor in the North Zone with Alberta Health Services Emergency Medical Services. Dallas is also a certified advanced care paramedic and a professional firefighter. Rhea Bell is a deputy registrar at the Alberta College of Paramedics, where she leads initiatives to regulate and support the paramedic profession in Alberta. Rhea is also a certified advanced care paramedic and previously managed AHS EMS employee programs and reintegration, focusing on psychological injury management and paramedic well-being. And lastly, we have Luke Umble on the call as well. Luke is an accomplished leader and educator within paramedicine. He currently serves as the chairperson of the Emergency Services Department at Northwestern Polytechnic, in addition to being a certified EMS instructor. Thank you all for being here to share your knowledge and experience with us. So let's get started. I'm going to now turn it over to Luke to get things going for us.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. Yeah, so I'm Luke. I'm an advanced care paramedic, currently teaching the paramedic programs at Northwestern Polytechnic, and I'm just going to share a brief little presentation here with y'all. All right, so essentially this kind of starts off your path here at Northwestern Polytechnic. The programs are new this year. We started our first program, the Primary Care Paramedicine, or PCP, and we're going to learn a lot of acronyms here today this fall. And then we're starting our Emergency Medical Responder, or our EMR program here in the spring. So this kind of just goes through our process here at Northwest Polytechnic in Grand Prairie for the paramedic programs. And Dallas and Rhea will jump in here too at times, because some of this stuff also applies to them as well. So I'll rely on their expertise to help me through this all. Why choose EMS programs at Northwestern Polytechnic? As we just said, we offer the EMR, or Emergency Medical Responder. I'll try and stick away from acronyms because those probably are new to you. And essentially, the Emergency Medical Responder course is a quick entry into EMS field, providing you with foundational knowledge. Can be compared a lot to an advanced first aid provider, but with certain medications that you're able to administer as an EMR, or emergency medical responder. Sorry, I'm trying to stay off the acronyms. It's ingrained in me. Yeah, and then the primary care paramedic, which we offer here as well. It's a more comprehensive program for advanced EMS careers. And we'll get into more of the details of how those courses are all laid out and how long each of them are. Both of those courses are offered asynchronous online, meaning we provide you with your course outlines and what you're supposed to be covering each week, but you don't have to meet up with your instructors online at any specific time. You just sign in and your lectures are there already posted. You can watch those and then post any questions or contact your instructor afterwards to get clarity. In both programs, there's mandatory on-site weeks, so we have you come to NWP in Grand Prairie here to our Health Education Center, which is in the new Grand Prairie Regional Hospital. It's beautiful. I think it's state-of-the-art myself. Yeah, it's a great area to come and learn for those hands-on skills and also scenarios. So we do patient-based scenarios with our high-fidelity mannequins that breathe and give you pulses, and you can talk through them. And they provide a lot of, you can do vital signs on them, so they're very interactive. We also have some standard patients where we actually use human beings as your patient, and they act out those certain conditions. So we're trying to do more standardized patients, but currently the majority of it is using mannequins. And then what do we learn from industry and professionals in a supportive environment here, ensuring students gain practical skills and experience under expert guidance. So there's myself and two other instructors that are currently working in the field. One's a primary care paramedic and the other one's an advanced care paramedic. And then we also rely on our industry partners like Dallas and RIA. We have a program advisory committee meeting that we meet twice a year to make sure that we're meeting the requirements of the industry. So what does an EMR do? They provide basic emergency care. They operate, obviously, emergency vehicles. They focus on stabilizing patients for rapid transport, and they support other healthcare professionals on scene, including primary care paramedics and advanced care paramedics. Again, a lot of their stuff is compared to advanced first aid or standard first aid, managing CPR, basic airway management, trauma, and medical assessments. Along with that is obviously treatments that go along with those. So a lot of times the EMR is like show up, if it's a critical patient, stabilize them enough for transport and transport them to the higher level of care. PCPs, they provide still basic life support. They assess, treat, and stabilize patient in medical trauma emergencies, and they also collaborate with other emergency services. But they're trained more with advanced airway management, initiating IVs, and also intraosseous, which is intravenous, or not intravenous, but intravascular access through your bone. They can also perform that and provide medications through those various routes. And then obviously they stabilize and provide care during transport. So where do paramedics work? Well, they work with Dallas and at ambulance services. There's Dallas is with AHS EMS, and then there's also private contractors in the province that are all underneath AHS EMS. They work in industrial areas. So there's lots of industrial ambulance services. Fire departments are big supporters of EMRs and PCPs. Remote and rural communities and healthcare centers, now we're seeing them more and more. Medical transport, such as air and ground services, police support services, and community centers. So we're not just in ambulances any longer, we're integrated throughout. So how does these programs work? So your emergency medical responder program, it's a 15-week, so essentially one term. The didactic, as we mentioned, is online, and during that 15 weeks, we bring you in at individual times for on-site weeks from Monday to Friday. There's 3 courses within the emergency medical programs. There's EMR Foundations, where we teach you all your skills and assessments and treatments. There's Professional Paramedics that goes through our stuff that Rio is probably going to cover, but a lot about our profession as paramedics, code of conduct, standards of practice, and then personal health and wellness, how to take care of yourself in a field such as paramedicine. That also includes emergency vehicle operations, airway, shock, circulatory, and medical trauma management, including mental health and wellness training. All in all, it's about 134 hours online and 164 hours on site in labs, plus 40 hours of vehicle operations training. PCP program is a little bit more in depth. It's a full year, so it's actually 3 consecutive terms, and there's 13 courses. These are all fall and winter terms or blended delivery, and during the fall and winter term, we bring you in again for 10 on-site weeks to go through all your content. The course is quite heavy. It's a lot of anatomy and physiology, pharmacology, patient assessments and care, communications, health and wellness, and professionalism. There's a huge focus on theoretical knowledge and practical skills. With the spring term, and then they go on clinical and ambulance placement. About 300 hours is dedicated where you work alongside paramedics on the ambulance, and then in a clinical setting with nursing, in order to gain more experience before you attempt the provincial exam, which I'm sure Ria will touch on here coming up as well. So mission requirements, so EMRs and PCPs, what we look for is obviously high school diploma or equivalent. Bio 30 with a minimum of 60%, Math 20-1 with 50, Math 20-2 with 60. English, so language arts, 30-1 or 30-2. And then there's some additional health and safety requirements like immunization checks, police information checks. We like to have you already have your first aid and CPR. There is one caveat with the emergency medical responder applicants. We do have a mature student pathway into our emergency medical responder. You have to be older than 21 and show experience and that demonstrate, or even experience and past medical or past education that demonstrates health-related interest. So we can move you into the EMR program without those upper prereqs of English, math, and bio, but it's based on your related health interest. Keeping in mind that you would still, if you wanted to now continue into PCP, you would still have to meet the bio, math, and English requirements. Just because you have your EMR wouldn't mean that you could just move into PCP. And you don't necessarily need your emergency medical responders certificate in order to become a PCP. You can go right into the primary care paramedic program without EMR. So how do you apply? Applications are actually open right now for both programs, so perfect timing for this. If you're interested, Northwestern Polytechnic admission advisors are available to assist students with submitting transcripts and required documents. They ensure a smooth application process. Once your prospective students have completed their admissions to NWP and they meet with the academic advisors to discuss their educational goals and program requirements. The primary care paramedic program follows a competitive entry process, which includes an interview. And we obviously expect all applicants to meet the deadlines to get all your documents in, of course. Usually submission deadline is by March, and then our interviews are scheduled for April. Currently, we have close to 47 applicants for our fall program already in PCP, for which we have 24 seats available for. So that's why there's an interview process. It's a competitive entry. The EMR, on the other hand, operates on an open enrollment, and it's a first qualified basis, which offers a more accessible entry pathway for people looking to get into EMS. Yeah, again, meeting these deadlines for getting all your documents is critical for securing a spot. And we encourage all prospective students to plan ahead and stay in communication with our NWP advisors for guidance throughout the process. We also have, within our primary care paramedic program, we have Indigenous student opportunities. So we reserve 2 seats for Indigenous students in the PCP program. The selection is based on your academic and interview scores, but applicants must also provide Indigenous membership citizenship documentation that NWP has specific criteria for.
If I could jump in there, I just
Yeah,
seen a
for
couple
sure.
questions, and I can read off the questions, but they were specific to entry, and I figured before you got too far
Oh,
down the
sure.
road.
Yeah, man.
So the first question is for NWP, do you need to be 18 years of age to enter the EMR program?
Yes, you do. That's not our requirements. That's the requirements from the Alberta College of Paramedics, who Ria will talk about. They set the education standards. Yeah.
Okay, a couple more questions for you. We'll keep you hopping.
Sure, man.
Do I need to have Bio 30 for EMR?
You do not, if you're a mature student and you're showing experience that demonstrates health-related interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question, and I'll let you know when we're done. So if you've got the prerequisites, can you start the program while you're in high school?
So currently we are working with high schools to do dual credit. So we're going to be eventually offering, I think, 3 to 4 courses within high schools that will provide credit into the primary care paramedic program.
Okay.
So generally speaking, no, because on-site weeks are mandatory, so we don't want you to be missing high school to come on-site.
Gotcha. I think that kind of asks that. We're getting really engaging here. I'm going to keep you going.
Oh,
'Cause you got
okay.
some more questions pop up. And I'm just going to do them first come, first serve. What does the interview process look like for getting into NWP? Like, what are some just general questions that you ask?
Sure. So we ask questions regarding around professionalism and like code of ethics and standards of practice. So we'll give you a scenario, a situation, and we look for how you would respond to that. And most of it is about a lot of the questions are about engaging your partner and engaging patients.
Can you just maybe speak in generalities what health related interests look like?
Yeah, sure. So like if you're already like maybe you're a lifeguard or you're working with fire casualty, potentially you're already gone and taken an anatomy and physiology course elsewhere. Um, anything that reflects that like this is the career pathway that you're interested in, even ride-alongs, like if you've done some ride-alongs, or maybe you're working as an advanced first aider in the industrial ambulances, stuff like that. Yeah.
The question about 20-1 was they didn't pass 20-1, but they got retro credits by doing 30-2. Would that still qualify as a prerequisite?
I don't want to say 100%, but yes, I believe so. Our advisors are the best folks to talk to about this, and they'd have to confirm all that with your transcripts. But as far as I know, yeah.
I think somebody here made a comment saying that they're going to retake their Bio 30, and it's a question to ask if they should retake it. They're already over 21 years old. But I think maybe they answered their own question here because they're also looking to become a PCP. So I'll just maybe answer that for you and say that probably be a good idea to go ahead and redo that. And just a general question about what dual credit process looks like.
Like essentially you could take one of our paramedic programs, not anything to do with like our paramedic foundations or anything, but like they're the general other programs like communications and healthcare. I believe the other one is anatomy. Ones that basically you'll get credit for, so that if you do come into the PCP program, you don't have to retake those. But you can essentially do those in high school. And then once you show up here, you already got that available to you. So it's not as a full course load for you. So what's after graduation, after NWP? So after you're done here and you're successful with all the program content, you would then send your transcripts to Alberta College of Paramedics, and Rio is going to correct me on this, I hope. And in order to write the provincial exam. So I think you have to prove to the Alberta College of Paramedics that your transcripts that you've are successful, and then you can apply for the provincial exam. So once you pass that provincial exam, you are now registered, and you register with the College of Paramedics. You're now eligible and qualified to work as an emergency medical responder or a primary care paramedic in Alberta. Yeah, and again, EMRs when they graduate, or emergency medical responders when they graduate, they can entry into EMS roles, as we mentioned, industrial healthcare, and they could also transition into the primary care paramedic program. And we already went through the primary care graduates opportunities in EMS, industrial healthcare facilities, air and ground, and you can transition into advanced care paramedic, which is the third tier in our profession. There's obviously a high demand for EMS professionals across Alberta and beyond. So I don't know, maybe Dallas would know this better than I do. What's the uptake rate of graduates?
In generalities, not enough.
Yeah, there's not enough out there, exactly. Yeah. So how can we prepare you? You need to prepare academically and professionally, stay organized with your application process, meeting your deadlines and requirements. Take advantages that NWP offers, such as student support services, financial aid, accommodations. Yeah, just kind of think about your career in EMS and whether or not, if you are thinking about this and you're not like wholly, 100% committed, maybe the emergency medical responder is the route for you first to kind of get your toes wet and figure out if this is for you before continuing on with your primary care paramedic. But essentially, we'd love to have folks, come through our doors here, and we're opening up every term. I don't think I mentioned this for the emergency medical responders. We're gonna have 12 a cohort of 12 every term. So every fall, winter, and spring term, we'll have 12 EMRs through our doors. And then in that same amount of time in that academic year, we'll have 24 primary care paramedics. So yeah, we're hoping to put out a lot of good folks here from within WP out into the field so that we can supply Dallas and everyone else with much needed EMS professionals. So yeah, apply now. There's a link for you. Missions is pretty open and they're great people to deal with. So you can always follow NWP on social media. And like Dallas said, we'll put some links in the chat for you later.
Thank you, Dallas, for preparing that presentation for us. I see a few more questions in the chat, so I think we'll just jump back where we left off before and get these over to you. Are there majors or minors to these programs?
Are there majors or minors to these programs? No.
Just only required courses to them.
Yeah.
That's good. I think we have one of these answered here. For those who need accommodations, will that be provided? I assume that's up to the students.
Yeah, they have to provide their accommodations to our Learning Commons, which is kind of our library essentially. And then the Learning Commons will provide those accommodations based on what has been already assessed. I don't believe that NWP does the assessments.
Does an advanced first aid certificate help with my, oh, I just can't read this, PCP requirements?
Yeah, it does. It is a requirement. But the biggest prereqs that are a hurdle a lot of times are those biomath and English. But you do need a CPR certificate or a first aid certificate as part of the prereqs as well. So it does help.
Okay, awesome. Someone says, I have my standard first aid and CPR AED while in high school. What more online courses can I do with school?
Depending on which one, if it's EMR, and you're a mature student, we can look at, if you're showing that progression towards healthcare. If you're PCP, you still need to meet the minimum entry requirements of biomath and English.
After graduation, do you recommend taking a year break or gap or go right into schooling for paramedic?
Oh man, you gotta have a break. It's so nice. Honestly, I went in right after, well, actually I worked a winter and then I'm like, oh, I gotta stop working. I gotta go work for EMS. No, and it's individual preference, honestly. I don't want to say anything that your mom and dad aren't telling you if that is someone that still has mom and dad, living with mom and dad. But yeah, it's personal preference. I think in between programs is a good idea a lot of times. Like if you take your emergency medical responder, it's always a good practice to go out and get some experience before then coming back into your primary care paramedic program. But again, that's individual decision there. Yeah.
So, firstly, thanks for having me. And for all you folks at home that are listening, just a little bit of my personal experience, I can let you know. I was 19 when I started in the paramedic profession. I'm going to be 35 this year. So, it's been a few years that I've been in, but I started pretty fresh out of high school as well. So, I took a year break. I did some university courses, didn't love it. And I actually jumped right into the PCP program, the primary care paramedic program. And I've been doing this ever since. So absolutely love the profession. My email's here. I welcome any questions if you want to email me or chat or have a Teams meeting or whatever. Happy to chat with everyone. Please feel free. Take notes, take pictures, take my email, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to kind of jump right in after what Luke's been talking about, which is great because he talks about that first step of becoming a paramedic, which is getting that schooling. And so what I'm going to talk about now is once you're done that schooling, whether it's EMR, your emergency medical responder, or primary care paramedic, we're kind of the next step after that. And so some people, it's a bit confusing when we're talking about Alberta College of Paramedics. We're not actually a school. When I talk about a College of Paramedics, we actually do a lot of different things. We don't do education specifically. We are the ones that actually look after the educational institutions that are providing you all that education. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the role of the college is here. And I'm not able to see the chat as it's coming in. So Dallas, Luke, jump in, just interrupt me if I need to answer some questions that are urgent. So a little bit about the College of Paramedics. So we are responsible for a few things in Alberta, and what really gives us the power and authority to do so is the Alberta government. So that's who kind of we report to. So we're a bit of a branch of the government, and what we really do and what we're here for is to protect the public and your safety. So if you called an ambulance today and Dallas and Luke respond to you, our duty at the college is to make sure that there's a couple things going on so that they can provide you that best care. So the first step is ensuring that all paramedics in this province are registered before you can work in Alberta. And that includes being an emergency medical responder. So whether you're going to work in industry, whether you're going to work on an airplane, whether you're working in a ground ambulance, we need to make sure that you are registered. And on top of that registration, that you meet certain requirements. And I'll kind of talk about what that is later on down the road. We also ensure that all of our paramedics maintain what's called a continuing competence program, which means just because you've done school once at the start of your career, it doesn't mean you stop learning. So we need to make sure that you're continuing that learning and that you're a competent practitioner, that your skills and your education and your learning are still up to date, as that industry grows. We also make sure, through what we call audit processes, that you are doing so. So once you're a registered member with us, you actually submit to the college and say, hey, this is what I'm doing as part of my education and my learning for this year. We also set what's called the standards of practice. Luke mentioned that in the EMR program, right? That's a really foundational piece of knowledge, is understanding what it means to be a paramedic practitioner. So that's our standards of practice. We also have a code of ethics. And so I would really urge you to, especially if some of your interview questions are talking about a standard of practice and a code of ethics, is you can actually look it up on our website. And it's all available to you. It's all in the public. So take a peek at those, and that might give you some good insight maybe into what some of these programs are looking for in regards to interview questions. We also set what's called the minimum requirements for education programs. So Luke spoke about his program. All of the requirements that our college sets out, the educational institutions have to follow those pieces. I'm not going to get into all those pieces. It's a really big process, but any educational program in Alberta that's delivering paramedic education has to follow our minimum requirements here in Alberta. And then kind of getting into the I don't want to say boring pieces, but a little bit more of the black and white area, is we carry out the function of what's called the Health Professions Act, which is set out by the government. So Luke did a great job of explaining the three different, what we call titles or designations in the paramedic category. So the first being that emergency medical responder. And so it's usually the kind of first intro into, hey, do I want to kind of be an EMS? Maybe that's the first step in you dipping your toe in. And hey, do I like this? I'm not really sure. It's a little bit shorter, a little bit more specific when we're talking about what's involved in the programming. It's a really good step to kind of test the waters to see if that's what you want to do. I kind of mentioned for myself, I wanted to jump right into PCP, which absolutely that can be a good decision for you if that's what you want to do. And typically those are around a 12-month program. Keep in mind, currently right now in Alberta, the College of Paramedics where I work is actually undergoing a big education overview. And so some of these timeframes may change a little bit, but that education is going to stay kind of the same for those three different levels. So primary care paramedic, a little bit more in depth. You have a few more skills that you're going to do. You're going to be expected to know a little bit more, have that deeper understanding of the education, what's going on in the body and things like that. And then that third step is an advanced care paramedic. Absolutely a much broader scope of practice. There's a lot more skills, knowledge, and everything required. These are really great building blocks, and each level kind of builds on your previous knowledge. I know someone put in the chat there about the critical care paramedic. That is a designation within Canada. Not many provinces really recognize that. That being said, when we talk about a critical care paramedic and their skills, some of our advanced care paramedics can practice to a very similar level, especially when we're looking at things like STARS air ambulance, the helicopter, as well as flight paramedicine. You're getting into the more deeper understanding of some of those pieces. But currently right now, we don't have a register where we kind of classify them as a critical care paramedic. So once you've done all of the things that you need to do at your educational institution, you've graduated, hurrah, like you're on that high. The next step is to contact us at the college, and we have what's called a registration process. And that's my department that I directly oversee. So again, if you guys have questions, please feel free, email me. We have some amazing folks in the back end that are great at answering those kinds of questions. So we have what's called the registration process, and that's where we ensure that you as a practitioner, you're coming out of school, that you have all the necessary skills and training to practice safely and competently in Alberta. And so I listed some of our registration requirements. On our website, we have lists and checklists so that it's really easy, and it's an easy roadmap to be able to go down 1, 2, 3 and make sure you have all the pieces. And like I said, some of the ladies in registration, they're absolutely amazing, walking you through if you're misunderstanding. They're great. So the first piece is liability insurance, which is insurance to cover your butts if you guys end up making a mistake or a complaint comes in and from the public or employer or whatever it might be, and there's been some wrongdoing. That liability insurance actually covers you and will help cover costs of any of the legal expenses. So we really require that for you for your own protection. The next is a criminal record check. And then Luke talked about our registration exam. So it's what's called the COPPER exam, and it's the Canadian Organization of Regulated Professionals. And that is actually a national exam. So most of the provinces in Canada will require that examination to be done prior to being registered. So it's a tough exam. I'm sure Luke can probably speak to a little bit in the program how they'll prep you for it and do those kinds of pieces. But the COPPER exam, there's, I want to say 4 to 5 rights. Luke, do you know how many rights there are a year? 5 rights?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, it's 4 or 5. Yeah.
4 or 5 rights. And so there's 4 or 5 opportunities that you guys have, within that year after to kind of go in and attempt these exams. There's a fee for it, but there's a lot of great resources. And I'm going to be honest, Alberta, our practitioners do extremely well. We have really high pass rates for it. And so once you pass that exam, then we're able to kind of move forward and continue with your registration process. So like Luke mentioned, you do have to provide us your original transcript. So the education institution actually provides it to us with your permission, of course, so that we make sure that it's valid. And then we also have what's called an ethics and jurisprudence examination, which kind of goes through some of our regulations, and it ensures that you have a solid understanding of what it means to be a regulated health professional, and that you've looked over our standards of practice and our code of ethics. We also have what's called a sexual assault and misconduct prevention training. And again, these are all applicants have to do these. They're really not that difficult. They're not week-long courses, right? You're going to be able to do them in a day or so. And then of course, we have to have our payment of applicable registration fees, and that's going to be prorated on the year depending, when you're applying and kind of what that looks like. There's a copy of a practice permit. So there you guys see, if you looked me up and, I was in the ambulance and I attended your call and you want to be like, oh, I want to make sure she's a practitioner in Alberta and she's not, lying to me and what's going on, you can actually look up my full name as well as my registration number. And it's going to tell you, yes, Rhea Bell is an active paramedic. Her practice permit status is active, and it'll show the start date and then the end date of when that expires. There's also permit details that you can go into to see if there's any conditions or restrictions on a paramedic license. So there may be some paramedics in this province that maybe they have a complaint against them, and it might show that they are not active and they're not practicing. So it's a public domain. You're able to look this up. If you type in Luke Umble, if you type in Dallas Pearson, you're going to be able to find what their practice permits look like too. And this is standard for healthcare practitioners in the province of Alberta. So you can look up your physician, you can look up your dental hygienist, you can look up your nurse practitioner. This is standard for healthcare practitioners in Alberta. So I did mention the big scary complaints and conduct. So part of the college's job is to make sure we're protecting the public. And unfortunately, there are times, because we work with humans and we are a human and we're not a robot, that means that there are human factors that may impact us doing the job, right? There may be mistakes that are made. It's important to not be afraid of the college. We're not here to, hammer down and, make sure you never practice again. We're here to ensure that the public is being safe. So there's a lot of pieces that can go into a complaint. It's not just, oh, if you get a complaint, you're never practicing again. I'll talk a bit about what that process can look like. So we do expect that all of our paramedics in the province adhere to a professional conduct. And so again, that's where I touched on that standard of practice and code of ethics. It lays out very plainly what we expect of our practitioners. So it's our legislative requirement from the government to ensure that we are regulating members and that their conduct is appropriate so that we can protect the public. So there's a few different ways that someone can report. So there's public and patient reporting. So like I said, if I attended your call and something went wrong, or I was maybe breaching the code of ethics, the public and the patient has an absolute right to be able to put in a complaint against me. And so they would put in that complaint right to the College of Paramedics. We have employer reporting as well. So if an employer knows that harm has been done, they have a duty to report it to the college. So for example, if I was working for AHS and my supervisor investigated me and found that, maybe I was stealing opiates from my employer and I was stealing them to sell them on the street. My employer has suspended me. They have the duty to report that to the College of Paramedics, to us, and we will also go forward and investigate what that looks like. And then we also have what's called a self-reporting feature for paramedics to come forward and say, hey, this happened, I did this, and I need to self-report that. So we have a couple different pathways. So within 30 days of receiving a complaint, we have a complaint department, and our complaint director is going to notify the paramedic who the complaint is about. They're going to notify the paramedic of that said complaint. Under the Health Professions Act, the complaints director has a couple ways that they can proceed. So like I said, we're not here to, oh my gosh, you got a complaint, you're guilty, that's it, we're just moving forward. No, we encourage the practitioner and as a college, we try to resolve the complaint together. Okay, so a lot of our complaints that come in actually will go to what's called a complaint resolution agreement. So a lot of times, the college and the practitioner that had the complaint against them come to an agreement and say, yep, I did do this. What are we going to do here to rectify this situation? Is it further education? Is there maybe a fine that comes along with it? Is there a condition? Do you have to practice supervise now? So there's a couple different ways to go about that. So with your consent, so if you put in a complaint against a practitioner, you are also going to be consulted. Okay, so the person that's putting in the complaint. There's also, the complaints director can also make a referral to that complaint resolution process, like I just talked about. If that is not working, those resolution pieces, and let's try to kind of figure it out. If it goes further, then the complaints director is able to refer the complaint into what's called the investigation process. That's where a paramedic investigator or someone that's employed by the college It doesn't have to be a paramedic that's investigating. We have 2 investigators at the college that the complaint will be assigned to, and that investigator is now going to take over that case and kind of go further and go deeper into that investigation. There's also times where the complaint might just be dismissed, right? So that complaints director, they read the complaint. Maybe it was a member of the public that said, you know what, Rhea had pink hair and we thought it was unprofessional. Well, the complaints director is going to read that and say, well, that doesn't violate any of our code of ethics or standards of practice. So they're able to dismiss that complaint. Okay. And so there also is I'm not going to get too into the weeds here, but under Section 118 of the Health Professions Act, where it talks about sexual abuse and misconduct, the complaints director can actually put a halt on a paramedic to say, nope, someone came, put a complaint in about myself, that I sexually abused a patient. The complaint director could immediately put a stop work on my permit and say I can't work anymore until the investigation is complete. That's a very serious allegation, and we don't mess around with that one. So like I said, if it goes to a investigation process, an investigator who is a neutral party is going to be appointed to that complaints process. And then they're going to go through kind of their steps on what does that look like. So the complaint may be dismissed if the evidence doesn't support what that complaint is, or maybe there's not enough evidence. With consent from the complainant, they may work with the paramedic to make practice changes. So if I was doing a skill and maybe I hadn't performed it in a while, and unfortunately I made a mistake with a patient, maybe I need to have some additional training to be able to provide that care again. Or the complaint may progress to what we call a formal hearing, which can result in some disciplinary action against the paramedic. And so that's when lawyers get involved and things like that, and it becomes very legal at that point. So some of our governance resources, I can put the links into the chat, or I can send them as well to you folks after, or if you email me, I can always send these to you as well. But everything can be found on our Alberta College of Paramedics website, and we have links to all these different governance resources, which tells us what we can and can't do as a college and what we expect of our paramedics. So there's my contact info. So feel free, if you guys need to take a picture of that, feel free to do so. But happy to answer any questions here if you have any.
Not seeing any in the chat.
Moving on. Awesome. Still see a lot of energy in the group. I just did a quick glance. We've literally got 50 people in the background here watching us, which is awesome. So I'm actually going to start by waking up your fingers and your keyboards and your phones. As I sort of bring it all together from an operational perspective, if everybody can just sort of, what are your thoughts on where do paramedics work? Like, what's that environment? But besides the office that's in behind me, I just kind of want to get a read of the crowd and what their understanding is of paramedics. In that as well, very short info. I've been doing EMS and paramedicine for a very long time. I see a lot of things that I remember from my entry pathway in the chat. I finished high school early, had to wait till I was 18 before I could take my what's now called primary care paramedic. In that time, I also had to redo a couple of my senior level high school courses as well. But I can say that from a career perspective, it is 100% a very rewarding career. It's one of those aspects that it attracts people that have that compassionate side, but are still a little bit of adrenaline junkies, because the career itself, you don't know what your day-to-day is. So if you're working frontline paramedicine, frontline EMS, when you start your shift, you have a rough idea when it's going to end, but that in-between piece, you don't know what's going to come your way. You will have what we call, our routine calls, which are helping people in need, and that's their emergency, and it might be fairly low acuity. But we also do very high level calls where the work that you do and the practice and the skills that you learn, through NWP, doing your EMR and your PCP and ACP, those skills do save lives. So, I mean, to look back on a career of paramedicine and say that, you've actually made a difference in society is hugely rewarding. when I think of my time when I started it within it's all good, Rhea. When I started in EMS, basically your options were you either ran the service or you worked as a paramedic. I like to point out that there are a lot of opportunities within a career as an EMR or primary or advanced care paramedic that a lot of people aren't aware about. So there's the obvious. There's the working in the ambulance piece. Somebody's done their homework in the background. I saw in the chat that somebody asked about a PRU or primary care paramedic. That's basically working as a one-man unit in communities as well, and that could be done at any level. It's usually in advanced care, but it could be any. Things that like to pique some people's interest is, other than frontline medicine, we have a wide scope of specialty EMS in the background. And it's not just within the province, but beyond. So, I mean, things like hazardous materials paramedics, incident response for emergency disaster management, so floods, wildfires, big community impacts. We also have public safety divisions. We also have tactical EMS, where a paramedic will be attached to a police specialty team to support their teams and the work that they do. Flight paramedicine is a big one in Alberta as well, and some services even have opportunities for primary care paramedics to work as flight paramedics in our northern and remote communities. So that's a completely different medicine, because you can't just pull over to the side of the road when you need to crack a window or do some patient care. Other little highlights I want to talk about, as far as those lateral movements within your career. Some people decide that they like the business side of EMS and healthcare, so they go into leadership roles. People start figuring out those other pathways. There's options for doing education. You can do public relations, literally where you go around and you talk to groups like this, or you go to high schools, you go to career fairs, you do community events. You can do research as well. So, I mean, and those are just sort of off the top of my head. So being a paramedic provides a lot of lateral opportunities like other careers. So, some people want to just work in the back of an ambulance for their entire career, and that's fine. But maybe some people want that variety to mix up their career and their pathway. So, there is that lateral movement option, which speaks to that comment about burnout in EMS. The work that frontline paramedics do is at times not easy work. It's a career that we see and do things that people shouldn't have to see and do. But it's a job that has to be there. And it takes a special person to be able to go out and care for public in their worst days and make a difference. As far as supports in the background, we live in a world that, whether you're working for, say, Alberta Health Services EMS or a private contractor, companies and organizations and industries provide a very robust framework of supports for people that work in industry, and not just health. So it's almost like a toolbox where you're giving all this information and you pick out of the toolbox what you need and when you need it, because what works for me for a support may not work for you, and what works for me today may not work for me tomorrow. So there is a strong support network of resources, plus your peers as well. So as you advance into healthcare or any career, you have to find out what your little triggers are, things that you need to help support yourself, because at the end of the day, you have to take care of yourself, or you can't take care of anybody else. So I hope that answers it. To add a little bit of humor to it, I've had maybe a server at a coffee shop that was way worse than any burnt out paramedic I've ever worked with. So it's all what you bring to the table, and that self-awareness to be able to take care of yourself and take care of others within your team. A couple other comments that popped up. People had asked about doing fire options or doing cadet programs, and what fire and fire EMS looks like. So across Alberta, there's a variety of direct frontline care. So locally here, and I'll say where I'm based, because if everybody wants me maybe to throw in a chat on where home is, because I don't know exactly where everybody's connecting from. Some of our communities are strictly paramedic based, so EMS is paramedics. Some of our communities across the province are dual or integrated services where the paramedic care is the same department as the fire department. So you will have dual trained staff that can work in different roles depending on what the need is. Seeing a lot of stuff pop up here. A lot of the bigger cities, like I'm seeing here, like Grand Prairie, Edmonton, it's actually separated. There's EMS and there's fire. It's separate. I do see some communities up here that are dual integrated services that do have both. Of interest as well, there's a lot of people that are connecting from rural communities. Like I'm just kind of picking off a few, like Fairview, Camrose, Lac-La-Biche, Olds, a lot of communities like that. Even though that they are separate systems, so there's an EMS system and then there's a fire system that's usually volunteer based or paid on call base. For those of you that are interested in EMS, I highly recommend, if you haven't done so already, door knock on your local small town fire department. Because what a lot of people don't know is fire departments across the province, most of them are partnered with EMS to do initial response and initial medical care for medical calls and accidents and stuff like that. So a lot of them have a baseline medical requirement. The bare minimum for them is CPR and first aid, but you'll get a lot of fire departments that also have EMRs and advanced care paramedics and primary care paramedics that are embedded within these volunteer services that support the work that we do within EMS. And from a small town perspective, it's a great opportunity to get your foot in the door for emergency services, understand what the work is like, because the entry is usually fairly quick, provides great opportunities for training. And it also provides that depth of competency that Luke talked about on, things that they look for in a mature student or when you're doing an application process. So if you've got that experience and understanding in your back pocket, it just notches you up a level within your career. Looking at some of my notes here, I just wanted to.
Just a question for you, Dallas.
Yeah.
How old do you have to be for a ride along, and what does that look like?
So I see ride-alongs from across. I'll throw an email in the chat and we'll also send it out afterwards. So across Alberta, we do EMS ride-alongs or job shadows within EMS. Within the contacts, I'll have to find out what that looks like for some of the contracted services that are provided throughout Alberta. But speaking in generalities, if you're at least 16 years old, 16 to just about 18 requires parental consent. And then anybody in the public from 18 years of age on. The basic requirements is you sign what's called an attestation, basically swearing that you're a good person and you don't have a criminal record. We also ask for a copy of your MMR vaccination, so your measles, mumps, rubella, just to make sure that you're protected. And then if you haven't already a pathway to do it, we do what's called a mask fit test. So an N95 mask fit test. Those masks we're all familiar with from wearing through the pandemic. Those are still a requirement for some of our patient populations. So the idea behind that is that it helps protect you and helps protect the patient. So we do that fit testing as well to make sure that everybody is safe. But I will throw an email in the chat after I'm done talking, and we do a little bit more Q&A, just so you can understand what that pathway is. It's you email in your information, we send you back a form, we set you up with a date at a station that works for you, and then you come out and you do a ride along, and you can basically, around your schedule, have that experience of what it actually looks like before you jump into a program. So and also as well, we're going to post some links to some YouTube videos just so you can kind of see, what a day in the life of a paramedic looks like, just to kind of keep that energy going for you. I just glanced down a couple of questions that I see popped up. One, the Edmonton base, yes, it'd be a very similar ride-along process. For driver's license, the class 4 is required to drive an ambulance. But if your interest in becoming an EMR or paramedic is on the industrial side of thing, it's hit and miss. Some employers require it, some don't. And that was one of the little sidebars I had as well, as far as opportunities for paramedics. So aside from frontline EMS, every industry has a health and safety something, no matter where you look. So you'll find paramedics and EMRs embedded in oil and gas industries, health and safety. I talked about that firefighter piece. So that's, if anybody's not sure where they want to take their career, having an EMR or paramedic in your back pocket is always great for a firefighter career. You see it in some of the police support programs across the province. Also, search and rescue departments across the province have a lot of EMRs and paramedics in there. Luke touched on it a little bit, that you actually see paramedics working in hospitals across Alberta as well. And basically they practice to the same scope that they were trained to. For comparable, I mean, it doesn't line up exactly, but an emergency medical responder would be like a healthcare aide, that sort of transition. A primary care paramedic would be like a licensed practical nurse. And then an advanced care paramedic would be like a registered nurse or an RN. So those competencies are close enough that we are able to work within hospitals in select environments. Also as well, some people that have got a taste for paramedicine see it as a lateral movement into other healthcare programs. Like, maybe you go from an EMR to a nurse or a paramedic to a doctor. So there's a lot of skills and education that is transferable into other aspects of health, and other industries. Just gonna look, see if I caught the other notes. Also as well, for interest as well, so I know we've got quite a wide spread of people that are dialed in. As far as a somewhat related career, there's also emergency communications that is tied to EMS, so working in a 911 dispatch center. And we have those across the province. I mean, somebody connected from Edmonton, we have one there. We have also in Peace River, we have a 911 dispatch center. And if that's something that you're interested in as well, the carrot for that is they do direct entry right off the street and train you for on-the-job training. So you don't have to be an EMR or paramedic to work in a 911 dispatch center. So that's an opportunity as well. I've even done that within my career time as well, and that gives you a different perspective of the work that we do. Just kind of scroll back.
Yeah, there
go
was
ahead.
one question about the mask fitting that you mentioned. Is that something that they need to, does it cost money for people interested in doing ride-alongs, or is, how does that process fit in?
So I know different areas of the province do it different. So I'm based in Grand Prairie. The work I do overseas, the work that I do is for Northern Alberta. So for us, we will bring you into the station either just before your ride along or a prearranged time, ahead of time, days ahead of time, and we just do it for you. I know some of the bigger centers, I couldn't speak to Edmonton. Some of the bigger cities require that you incur that expense and go get it externally and then come in with it. So, I mean, if you're interested as well, have conversations within your friends and family. It might be something that somebody who has an industry connection might be able to hook you up for that to save that expense.
Awesome.
Sorry, I saw one. I'll jump on and then let me know what else you see.
Oh, you bet.
So for a ride along, do you just sit and watch? For the most part, yes. A ride along is an observer capacity. Part of it ties to what Ria was talking about, the regulations of paramedic and the care we do. Some of the stuff there seems scary, but the work we do is caring for people and caring for the public. So it is taken with a great deal of seriousness. So for a ride along, you might get asked, grab the foot of a stretcher and help move or carry some bags. But the actual patient care piece and that patient interaction is done by the EMRs and the paramedics.
I saw one question about, are there any volunteer opportunities aside from joining for a ride along?
I would, in that contact for email that I sent for ride along, if you're interested in volunteering, send a note in. So across the province as well, we're partnered with charitable organizations specific for EMS. There's a EMS foundation that is basically Edmonton and South. And then there's a regional EMS foundation, which is the northern half of the province. And we do community engagements and supports for firefighter, search and rescue, and EMS. So within the work that we do different types of community engagement. So there are times throughout the year that we do look for that volunteer capacity to help out. And that's another great way to get to know who's who, if you will.
There's a question about, do people have success doing paramedic courses online? Looks like Rhea and Luke have answered to that, unless you want to touch on that, Dallas.
I mean, from my experience, I mean, we live in a digital online world, especially coming out of the pandemic. I think the online learning platforms that schools do offer still create that sort of cohort team interaction. So you're able to still meet with a class in a online virtual environment with some time to study on your own. So, you get what you put into it, I think, as far as the education pieces. So yeah, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't discount any sort of, online blended options as Luca described.
Yeah, it really takes it's doable for sure, and a lot of programs do it. I know Portage, Northern Lakes, ourselves, and I think Nate might offer one of their PCP cohorts and their EMR cohorts online blended delivery. And so it's occurring more and more, and people can keep working. But again, like I said in the chat, it's a commitment. It's not like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna go online and do some work today. It's a full-time program. There's 6 courses in your first term and 5 in the next. So it's a dedication for sure. It's an 8-hour day at home, doing all your readings and studying. So if you can stay motivated and you like that, that I would suggest that for sure.
Throw in a email address for ride along inquiries and volunteer inquiries. So for those of you who are curious about that, it is just in the chat there now. And that'll go to our administrative support to help sort of spread that out through our operations across the province and find that fit. I know somebody made a comment, and I'll address as well. Somebody had said that they had tried for a couple of months. So if you wouldn't mind, apologies for the lack of somebody following up to you. But if you want to send in a request again, because I suspect come tomorrow they're going to have a lot of emails that they're going to have to send some forms out and coordinate. So that'd be awesome.
Dallas, do you mind if I touch on a question that Annie put in the chat?
Please.
So really good question. Is there much superiority bias in the EMS community, like PCPs treating EMRs? So I really want to reference our code of ethics. And so if you do look up our code of ethics, we really talk about the responsibility to the profession and oneself, of course, to patients as well. But we really, really emphasize that you need to be respectful, and really the baseline is treat others as you'd like to be treated. Are there going to be some bad apples, as in any profession? Of course, there might be those certain people, but in the medical field and what they're teaching and reinforcing in schools and what we enforce at the college is that there needs to be that respect of the profession, which includes mentoring others, that includes how you treat your colleagues, that includes how you treat your patients, right? So we really put emphasis on those pieces to make sure, because you never know, right? Your partner or an EMR that you work with could be responding to you in your home community, right? So having those really strong relationships is important.
Any profession, any sort of setting, you're always going to have that somebody or a couple individuals that just can't get along well with others. So I mean, and that goes with any industry. Where I'll take it to the extreme other end is I've been doing this over 3 decades. There are paramedics that I haven't worked with for a long time, but the work that you do within this profession, it's hard to describe the bond you make amongst your peers. And I've had it with some of our significant deployments across Northern Alberta that I'll bump into somebody that I hadn't worked with for 20 years. And it's like I worked with them last week. Like you just pick up right where you left off. I mean, and that's just something that's in the background. You build such tight relationships and you have an understanding of the work that you're doing and, those pressures and successes. The team that's in the background that supports us across the province is huge. So I think that says something for the profession and the work that we do.
And I'll just add to that, the more the more people we get through the programs that are positive, like it seems like this group is here, that, you know, you're just going to make the profession even better. So, you know, you have to, there can be, like Rhea and Dallas did mention, there can be those naysayers out there, but that's with any profession. The true professionals, I find, are there every day to make a difference and to do their job. And to, you know, we have a lot of fun doing it too. I'm full-time here, but I still work casual on ambulance here in Grand Prairie. So yeah, I enjoy it. I just have fun when I'm there, and you get a lot of some downtime, and when you do, it's pretty chill. You get hang out in the hall and talk with your peers and learn things from them on what they did that day, and there's a lot of good camaraderie. So just keep that in mind if this is the career or any career you go into. Just always keep a positive outlook when you're there, so that you're not that naysayer wherever you end up in your careers going forward.
We have a couple of fun questions in the chat here. Do paramedics enjoy teaching the more green people? I'm assuming that means beginners. There's someone here that doesn't want to go for a ride along and be in the way. So who would like to take that question?
I'll jump on that.
Okay.
So kind of tied to the question we were talking about maybe some of those bias. So yes, there might be the odd person that doesn't want to teach somebody green, but those are extremely few and far between. Part of becoming a member of the Alberta College of Paramedics, and I'm kind of paraphrasing it, we have a culture and a professional understanding of teach and be taught. So when new students are coming out, there's an expectation that, you know what, the old ancient seasoned paramedic is going to, you know, teach those field tricks to the new paramedic, but also that new one's bringing up the new knowledge and the new skills that are coming out. So it is a blended relationship. As part of my role, I still do teaching with some of our EMS programs. I still love it. I still love sharing that experience that I can push on to future paramedic generations.
Dallas, if I can jump on that, and
Yeah.
folks, I can give you some personal experience. I came from out of province, and I actually came from Manitoba, and I did not know a lot about Alberta. And luckily, the two gentlemen that you see here were actually up in Grand Prairie, and really, really, really welcomed me. So coming from a new province, I was an advanced care paramedic, but we didn't have the same equipment. The landscape looked totally different. You know, I was in a leadership role, and I had all of the staff welcome me with open arms, teach me all that they know. And then vice versa, right? I'm able to teach them things that I know, and it was a really great experience. So coming as a newbie into the province, and I'll tell you, I was pretty scared about it. It was a fabulous experience, and I get to work with them again in this role, and you'll make some lifelong friendships in this profession.
Is the uniform black or navy blue? Why are there different ones?
You know, it's really depending on the organization you work for. So the one I'm wearing right now is a dark navy blue. I've worked throughout my career, I've worked in white, I've worked in light blue. Even some of our teams within EMS in the province, some of them wear golf shirts, you know, some of them that are embedded in the community doing at-home patient care in people's homes. Some of our specialty teams, you will see them in basically, you know, the olive green Army colors, or a suppressed gray if they're working with some of the police teams. So it really depends on the work that they do and the team they're attached to. But yeah, you know, I've even wore a paramedic cowboy shirt and jeans for doing stampedes and rodeos and stuff like that. So it really depends on the work, to be honest. There was a couple comments I saw way up earlier. People that had questions about other colleges and other institutions. Part of the reason we got NWP here is, you know, some partnerships that we have, not only our collaborative working history together, also too that the Regional EMS Foundation has been partnering with NWP lately. I think for you individuals, do your homework and find out what works for you and your environment, and your school and your family. There are, by all means, there are other options. I do, you know, like to, you know, say that NWP's got a great energy right now and a lot of community support. And you know what, without being biased, they are the, you know, the newest and shiniest paramedic programs within the province right now. So that's my bias. Plus, it is local. We do like to try people local. But find what works for you. I've worked with people that have done their schooling internationally and come back. So I mean, the life and the education is yours, and it's what you put into it.
I did put in the chat as well all the approved programs. If you are looking for different areas, I know everyone here is across the province, so there's some different options in there. But like Dallas said, do your homework. He did mention, especially if you're, you know, in the north, when you're working and doing your education and you do ride-alongs and you do your practicum in those areas, a lot of times you build really great relationships, and that's where you want to apply to work after. So really take into consideration, you know, that work location after, and maybe see what schools like Northwestern Polytech can offer in that community.
I see a very interesting question in the chat. As someone who lives in a rural community, would it be better to start your career in a rural or an urban area?
I'd mentioned it earlier that, you know, we don't have enough paramedics to do the work that we do across the province. You know, we are short staffed. We have been for quite some time, so the demand is quite high. I will say that early on in my career and up to as of just recently, you actually had to have rural experience before the big metropolitan cities would even look at you as a paramedic. And the reason for that is rural medicine is different than city medicine. I mean, the care is the same, the education, like the skills, everything the same. The difference is when you're in a rural or remote community, it's you and your partner. You know, maybe you have a fire department that can help support you, but when you get way out away from the city, a lot can go wrong or a lot can go really well depending on your treatment because we're transporting for hours versus the big city centers where you know, I've worked both. I've worked rural and I've worked metro. It is different. I've worked in a big city and had an entire call that was 5 minutes from call to pick up to transport at the hospital. So that's a lot different compared to a really sick patient who you're 5 hours with. So I would say that there's advantages to both, but your rural and remote medicine really steps up your clinical practice to being able to think through human system problems and what treatment you can do. And also too, you know what, from a very basic life support standpoint, really good basic life support skills go a long way when you have a long transport time. So just something to consider.
Another question here about shift work or rotations. Would you be able to brief them on that?
Again, it depends on the community and who you're working for. Shifts come in a wide variety. We do have some paramedics that literally only want to work daytime or only want to work nighttime or only want to work during the peak hours. And it's structured in such a way that you can work those environments. If you're just jumping in with both feet and you want to do it all, those shifts can vary from you know, 10 to 12 hour days or night shifts. Some of our communities do what we call a core flex or an on-call piece. So you go up to a community and you're part of the local paramedic crew and you're on call and you're on shift. And then as the calls come in, you start accumulating your work time according to government regulations. And then, you know, once you put in your 12 hours, you're on overtime. If you go more than 14, we basically put you on a stop clock and say, you're done for 8 hours. We'll see you in the morning. So we don't work you like a rented mule, despite common belief that there is actual policy and procedures in there that we give you your mandated downtime, and we really watch for crew fatigue and stress to make sure that you do get the downtime that you need. And it's not just a random supervisor watching it; it's actually monitored through crew tracking and time on task and communications through dispatch and stuff like that. So.
Dallas, can I just jump in regards? There's been some questions in regards to mental health and things like that. I just want to jump in from a college perspective. We do not put any restrictions on medical information. So when you're registering with us, if you want to become a paramedic, we don't ask, hey, do you have PTSD? Do you have depression? You know, what are your other medical conditions? There's nothing that would prevent you or that would be a barrier to entering that profession. Now, that being said, the best people to follow up if you do have some concerns or questions would be your medical treatment provider. So whether it's a family physician, maybe you have a psychologist, things like that. There was also a question in regards to, you know, is there a psychologist or mental health therapist that will support you when you're a paramedic? Absolutely, there are. There are a lot of great resources within Alberta that actually specialize in first responders and paramedics. A lot of this was the work that I did when I was at AHS, and there's absolutely amazing programs. There's programs that if you are injured in the workplace and you know, you do have to take a leave, or maybe you know, a stress leave, or if you are diagnosed with PTSD due to the job, there's a lot of resources that a lot of these different employers within Alberta can offer. So, you know, things like reintegration programs, peer support programs, treatment provider recommendations, a lot of different supports that are going to come together. We also have resources on the Alberta College of Paramedic website in regards to mental health. We have training courses. So there's a lot of support for that right now. And you guys even asking questions in regards to mental health is just light years better than when I first started in this profession. So, you know, I think we've done some really good job of supporting our workers, and, you know, we can always do better, but there are supports in place now.
Somebody asked me to clarify a question. I think I made a comment about going off shift if you put in so many hours. The really short answer to that is some communities across the province or small towns have EMS stations where paramedics are also residents of the community. So depending on their shift structure, they actually have the opportunity to sleep in their own bed at night, or go home when they're timed out to have that downtime with their family and pets and stuff like that. So yeah, it's not a horrible work environment. I don't think there is a policy. I looked at the one question here, policy about rings and tattoos. A lot of, even within, I'd say, emergency services. Yeah. Rhea supporting hers. Emergency services in general. The culture has really changed. I mean, unless you have something that's blatantly disrespectful to the public tattooed across your forehead, it's just part of us accepting who you are as an individual. A lot of people are, wearing short sleeves and showing ink at work, or have various piercings, and it's a very accepting culture, regardless of how you are at work. So yeah.
I'll just add to that. The only thing that it would stipulate on piercings or jewelry is if it interferes with your protective equipment. So if you have
100%.
if you have a big dagger ring on and you're trying to put gloves on and it's ripping all the time, you got to get rid of that. I wouldn't wear a ring. I wear a ring out here, but at work I don't wear any rings because I've had them pinched before lifting heavy stretchers. And then piercings. So any piercings or beard, like when I go to work with AHS EMS, I got to shave this off. So things like that, you gotta, because for the mask requirements. So other than that, yeah, Dallas is correct, and Rhea's all looking good as always. So yeah, it's a really accepting culture for sure in that respect.
There's one question here. I think it was mentioned earlier. Is there access to trauma counselors or any other mental health supports throughout the career?
So depending on where you work, I'd say generally speaking, yes. So through work, we have a host of employee and family assistance programs, which allow you to make out and reach that connection. It is definitely a very accepted practice within the profession, especially to have that baseline throughout your career, so you have something to measure it on. Somebody asked the hardest part about being a paramedic. It's different for everybody. There's certainly been different things throughout my career that were, maybe not so cool moments, but you learn to process it, and maybe that's part of the hardest part, is learning how to process the work that you do, being able to ask for help when you need it, and be able to talk through it with your peers and your supports. Actually, I did, as maybe we look at sort of the end of the evening, maybe here shortly, there was a question for you, Emily, there about future events. Salary for For paramedics and EMRs, again, varies whether it's public or industry. Starting, and I'm just speaking in generalities, please don't hold me to it. EMRs, can start somewhere around that mid $20 an hour range. And then it just goes up from there depending on the work that you do. And the roles that you have. I mean, certainly the higher you get up and the more time you have in the saddle and what roles you perform, it's equivalent with any sort of industry that's out there. As far as the other industries that are in Alberta, I would say it's comparable. So you can have a very healthy lifestyle and support your needs working in EMS.
Is it stressful being in an ambulance while you're helping a patient? I'm sure it can be.
I would say those that gravitate towards this career, not that we wish ill on the public, but there's comfort in helping people. So, there are stressful circumstances, but being that person on the helping side of things, is always, I think where a lot of paramedics end up. A couple rapid fire. Somebody asked driver's license. You need to have a class 4 driver's license to be a paramedic, and that's an easy upgrade for your license now. And a question about public image. I would say, speaking in generalities, public like paramedics. Some people have different opinions about police because if you're having a conversation with a police officer, it's usually because you've done something bad. But paramedics are there to help. So we're seeing in that sort of it's kind of a blend between healthcare and emergency services, but in generalities, we are respected within that public realm.
Bulletproof vests. How common are they?
Bulletproof vests. So bulletproof is kind of a misnomer because I don't think anything is bulletproof. So the protective vests that you do see some paramedics wear, it's an option in most communities unless you're attached to, say, a police specialty team where it's a very high risk and thou shall wear it. It's an option for our crews to wear. It's an extra level of security for maybe somebody that takes a swing at you, or yes, maybe if somebody does think you're not a nice paramedic and wishes you ill. For me as well, even when I rarely get out into that operational world, I still wear a vest, but for me, it's at my age and experience, it forces a rigid posture a little bit. So I'm more cognizant from a health and safety standpoint when I'm lifting bags and stretchers. My core is a little bit more together. So there's that side of it for me as well. But it's an option. You don't certainly have to wear it. There's advantages and disadvantages to wearing those.
Thank you so much to our speakers, Dallas, Rhea, and Luke, for sharing their knowledge and their many years of experience with us. I so appreciate the time they took to be with us this evening, and I hope they have inspired you to further explore a career in EMS.